Hello, and welcome to another edition of Myths and Legends. I'm Jean Fellows from the Grand Ledge Area District Library. Today, we'll be examining some of the myths and legends of Asia. Now, the Grand Ledge Area District Library has an extensive collection of stories, myths, and legends from many cultures. You'll find the books in the juvenile nonfiction section and by searching our catalog. From Greek and Roman, Egyptian and Native American, Norse, Chinese, and other Asian cultures, we have many exciting books of mythology. Now, when we think about Asia, of course, we always like to think when we're talking about these stories from different countries of where we are in relationship to where they are. So here's the United States of America on our map. And Asia is often defined as this whole large area over here, including some of the Middle East and Russia. You can get a little clearer look at it here. And often we think of Asia as being primarily the countries perhaps of India, Nepal, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand, Taiwan, Japan, North and South Korea, perhaps Mongolia, and definitely China. So today we'll look a little bit more in depth at the myths of China. When we begin to create these informational slideshows, I look at a lot of different resources. And of course, that means I always go to the Grand Ledge Area District Library website. And on our website, I can find lots of places to find interesting resources. For example, if I use our library catalog and I search for Asia, our library catalog at the Grand Ledge Area District Library will return 57 different entries. And they'll begin with books like this one, Asia, by John Sohn. And this is another nonfiction title, a fictional children's book of children's stories, folk tales from China, Japan, Korea, and India. And another whole group of different ones, including many titles for adults as well. Another place I might look is I might choose the Encyclopedia Britannica, which will show 5,212 entries for the search Asia. Here's what one of those entries will look like. The article focuses on Asia, and you can choose to look at images and videos. It'll guide you to other related information, and it even has some resources for teachers. Depending on the age group, there are reading levels for the article, and they go from the easier reading levels on up to the more complicated. And there are a number of tools up here to help you as you interact with the article, whether you're doing research or whether you're just reading for interest. The other things you'll find are these images and videos, and we'll take a quick look at what's on the page there. And one of those images shows us a Buddhist temple that stands in Nanjing, China. The religion of Buddhism was founded in India, and it soon spread throughout Asia. So here is this beautiful, elaborate temple. And you can see over on the side here, there are a number of other images that you can click to bring up, and they'll show you other pictures as well. Now, today we're looking at some of the myths and legends of China. And to do that, we're going to look a little more closely into things included in this book, which is, of course, titled Myths and Legends of China. And it is a publication of World Book. World Book is another encyclopedia company, and so this is a largely nonfiction book, although it does include some fictionalized stories. In the introduction to this book, it discusses some things that we've heard in other books in this series, where we understand how myths and legends came to be developed. Or in earliest times, people told stories to explain the world in which they lived. The stories are known as myths, and myths try to answer questions like, how was the world created? Who were the first people? Where did animals come from? They try to answer the questions that people have about the world around them. People explain natural events using stories about gods, goddesses, spirits of nature, and heroes. And as the story says, most often now we would use science to come to some of these answers, but it doesn't mean that we don't still refer to and think culturally about these other aspects as well. Now, myths differ from folk tales and legends. Folk tales are more fictional stories about people or animals. They're not set in any particular time or place. They begin and end in a certain way. So you might be familiar with folk tales that begin with the phrase once upon a time. And they might end with a standard, they lived happily ever after. So legends, of course, are set in the real world in the present or historical past. They might distort the truth, but they could be based on real people or events. Now, myths, in contrast, typically tell of events that have taken place in the remote past. And unlike legends, myths have also played and often continue to play an important role in a society's religious life. So there are pictures on the page which give you some other examples. This gentleman is enacting something from the myth of the Monkey King, page 58. And this is the world of the Chinese zodiac, which is discussed on page 28. And it shows some of the familiar symbols for those of you who may be familiar with celebrating this like a Chinese New Year. So we have the year of the horse, the year of the snake, and the year of the rabbit, and the rat, and the rooster, and the monkey. All of those are shown around here. So myths were originally passed down from generation to generation by word of mouth, by speaking, by stories that were told to people. So partly for this reason, there are often different versions of the same story. Many myths across cultures might share similar themes, a battle between good and evil. But the myths of a society generally reflect the landscape, climate, and society in which the storytellers live. Let's see what some of those are. Oh, and to look into this a little bit further, we're going to talk a little bit about the age of the culture in China. So the myths and legends of China are vast and complex because China was home to some of the world's earliest civilizations. By about 10,000 BC, a number of cultures had developed in that area. From two of them, the Yangshao and the Longshan, distinctly Chinese civilization emerged. Yangshao culture reached the peak of its development around 3000 BC. The Shang, the first Chinese culture that left written records, emerged in northern China around 1600 BC. So ancient China had many different cultures and different deities. Some date back to the country's earliest cultures, and others joined the Chinese pantheon, which is a collection of deities, after Buddhism arrived in China from India. So although many of the stories in this book appear simple, they often are layered with meaning, and retelling of stories can reveal new insights. Let's look at their first creation story here. Pan Kun creates the world. The Chinese story of Pan Ku, the first being, tells how he created earth and sky. Once, everything in the universe was without form, and all this formless material swirled inside a cosmic egg. The first being, Pan Ku, was born out of this formlessness within the cosmic egg. He struck the swirling elements in the egg with his hand, causing them to spin. In time, the light and airy yang elements separated and rose up to become the sky. The heavy and dark yin elements sank down to become earth. Pan Ku changed as the universe changed within the cosmic egg. He changed 9 times a day. Sometimes he was a god in the sky. Sometimes he was a holy being on earth. To keep the sky and the earth from mixing again, Pan Ku grew each day. Each day he pushed the sky and the earth farther apart. This continued for 18,000 years until there was no more room in the cosmic egg. Then the universe blossomed into the shape it still has today. Satisfied that sky and earth had now achieved their permanent places, Pan Ku rested, for he was weary in body and spirit. As he slept, his body died and gave further shape to earth. His eyes became the sun and moon. His arms and legs became the 4 great mountains that mark the 4 directions. His blood flowed as rivers. His flesh became soil, and his hair became trees. His breath formed the sky and winds, and the lice that had previously crawled over his body became humans. Some say the spirit of Pan Ku remains on earth. When he is content, the weather is fine. But when he is sad or gloomy, that's when storms roll in. So the next section of the book discusses a little bit of the story of Pan Ku. And it tells you more about the civilization, some of the things that went on at that time. Here's a marvelous drummer who beats time for rowers in this Chinese wood carving, which shows dragon boat racing. Here is an example of Chinese sages or wise people who are admiring a scroll decorated with a yin and yang symbol. And here is an example of something a doctor might use in China. It is a meridian for acupuncture. And this is part of the Chinese traditional medicine is qi. So now that we've seen that, let's see if we can hear another story. This is Hu Yi, the divine archer. Hu Yi became a great mythological hero when he used his arrows to save people from a terrible drought caused by the presence of 10 suns in the sky, though he paid the price for angering the king father. Once on a faraway island, 10 boy suns played in the branches of a mulberry tree. The tree was so vast, its branches reached to heaven, and its trunk was so large that 1,000 men holding hands could not encircle it. This tree was the home of Di Jun, the king father of the East, his wife, Ji Wang Mu, queen mother of the West, and their 10 boy sons. Each day, the queen mother would ride to the top of the mulberry tree in a chariot drawn by 6 dragons. She would pick up one of her boy sons and then travel all day across the sky from east to west, sending life-giving light back to Earth. By the time their chariot disappeared beyond the western mountains, the young boy son would be asleep. His mother would take him back to the mulberry tree and tuck all of her children into bed for the night. After 100 years, this routine grew tiresome for the boy sons. They wanted to play in the sky together. So one morning, before the queen mother of the West could pick up one of her boy sons for a ride across the sky, all 10 of them flew off, laughing. They had a wonderful time playing together. But while the boy sons played, the people of Earth suffered. 10 bright suns blazing in the sky above soon created a terrible light and heat. The rich, moist soil of the earth turned to dust. The tall crops withered. The abundant waters of the rivers and the lakes began to boil. The animals of the forest and the animals of the fields were driven mad by thirst and then died. The bright sky dazzled the eyes of the people, blinding those who did not hide inside. Even in their huts, people were too frightened and too hot to move. In their suffering, people turned to Emperor Yao, who prayed night and day to the king father of the East for relief. The king father tried to persuade the boys to come home, but the boy sons were reckless and disobedient and ignored their father. Exasperated, the king father sent for Hu Yi, the divine archer, and gave him a scarlet bow and a quiver filled with 10 white arrows. Hu Yi, the king father of the East, commanded, restore order to earth. Use this bow to frighten my sons into obedience. But when Hu Yi reached the earth, he was shocked by the devastation. The time for peaceful measures is past, raged Hu Yi. These suns must be destroyed, or all life on earth will perish. Drawing back his bow, Hu Yi let fly the first of his 10 arrows. It struck one of the boy sons, who exploded and fell to earth in a fireball. Hu Yi loosed another arrow, and another. Now there were 6 boy sons, then 5, then 4. People began to peek out of their homes to cheer on Hu Yi. But Emperor Yao worried that Hu Yi, in his anger, would destroy all the boy sons and plunge Earth into everlasting darkness. So the emperor sent a soldier to secretly remove one of Hu Yi's arrows from his quiver. When there was only one boy son left, Hu Yi reached for his last arrow, but his quiver was empty. Although the people were cheering him, Hu Yi lowered his bow, leaving one sun to light the earth. When at last Earth was safe, Hu Yi rested from his labors and returned to heaven. But the king father of the East was furious. I told you to frighten my sons, not to kill them, the king father thundered. I can never forgive you for this. Since you love humans so much, you can live with them. Thus, Hu Yi and his wife, Chang'un, were turned out of heaven and stripped of their ability to live forever. During his life on Earth, Hu Yi taught other humans how to use the bow so the art would not be lost after his death. Hu Yi is still remembered for his great deeds. And so, in that way, he became immortal again. The next section of the book then explains a little bit of the world of Hu Yi the archer, and it shows what the terrain in China looks like in the area. The Chinese call their country Zonghao, which means middle country. And the name probably came from the ancient Chinese belief that their country was the geographical center of the world, and of course, the most cultured civilization. The English name China probably came from Qin, the name of an early Chinese dynasty, which means a series of rulers from the same family. There's more details on Chinese culture here. And you can see this Qianlong Emperor, who reigned in the mid-1700s, posing in his ceremonial armor, carrying a quiver of white arrows. And there's more depictions of town life in early China here. In the back of the book, there's an explanation and the name of the deities of China: Kuan Yin, Dijun, Nua, and it explains all of their different characteristics. Here's Pan Ku that we just read about. And then there are some other ones that I've never heard of, but it is a useful reference. Now you can visit the Grand Ledge Area District Library in person or on our website for more ways to explore myths and legends from around the world. You can watch for updated content on our YouTube channel, keep up with our activities on Facebook or our events calendar. And if you enjoy science and fun experiments, we have growing, swooping, flying, and exploding Curious Gladdle offerings on our website as well. Thank you for joining us today.